Welcome to the Fora Podcast, a space where real people share real stories. Every episode opens a door into someone else's world with unexpected turns and honest moments that spark connection. I'm Cheryl Crupi, mom, writer, athlete, and artist. I'm curious about what connects us, and I believe every person holds something unexpected and beautiful.
And I'm Kenan, dad and coach. I'm passionate about doing hard things. My favorite way to learn is by listening to people and their stories.
Our first set of listeners, you're our friends and family, and you listened to our first podcast episode, and one of the pieces of feedback was that you wanted to know more about us. In fact, we realized that we had literally forgotten to say our names or introduce ourselves at all. So now we're going to do 2 episodes, one Kenan interviewing me and one me interviewing Kenan, so you can get to know a little bit more about us.
Consistent feedback was, if we didn't know you personally, we wouldn't know who the hell you people were. We hope that as people listen to our episodes, that they over time get a sense of who we are. But it definitely makes sense to do some podcasts telling our story. That gives us a chance to experience what it's like to be the person being interviewed, talking about yourself and going somewhere that connects other people, which is the goal of the podcast.
I can tell you what it was like for me, which is when I knew we were going to do this episode. I first thought, I have no stories. And then we had a conversation about it, and we came to a topic, which is talking about my grandmothers and the influence they had on me. I reflected about it a lot. The actual recording was kind of scary, and then it was exhilarating. And then afterwards, I worried that I had forgotten things and said them poorly. And I talked to someone who's a broadcaster, and she said, that never goes away. But I have to say, I'm pretty delighted with the result. So thank you, Kenan.
You're welcome. Let's get into it. Cheryl, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat now.
I am in the hot seat. I'm a little nervous.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Queenie's in downtown Durham. We're using their recording space, so we want to thank them. We're here today with Cheryl. She's my co-host, typically, but now she's going to share her story, or at least part of it, with us. I want to prime you for this, or set up you and our listeners to know where we're going, because we had a prep interview. And the story that we landed on was the things that are really important to you: harmony, beauty, peace, and fun.
Harmony, beauty, peace, and fun.
And then we started talking about your family, and specifically your family history, which is really interesting. And you said when you knew you were going to do this podcast, you couldn't stop thinking about your grandmothers.
Yeah. And since we had the conversation, I've been thinking about them a lot.
Tell me who your grandmothers were.
Well, one of them was named Phyllis Briggs, and she grew up in Massachusetts and had a pretty amazing life. So that's my mother's mother. My father's mother, her name was Santa Crupi, and she, I believe, I meant to check this. Her parents came from Sicily, and I'm pretty sure she was the first child born in the United States.
Okay.
She was an Italian immigrant.
So who do you want to start with? I have questions about
What do you want to know?
I want to know when, let's start with Santa. When did she get here?
I think she was born here.
I'm sorry. When does her story start? What time period are we talking about?
Yeah, the 20s.
Yeah.
She was born, I'm pretty sure, because I was looking at this recently, because my family, we were trying to get Italian citizenship. A lot of people are doing that these days.
Italian citizenship?
Yeah,
Oh.
You can get dual citizenship. My kids were excited about that because they would be able to work in Europe. So we were trying to do that. Turns out the laws have changed and you don't qualify anymore. But what I remember is that my grandmother was born, I think, in 1921 or right around then. My great-grandfather didn't naturalize until 1927. So she was born, her parents were Sicilian. They came through Ellis Island and settled in New York State and farmed. They were farmers in Sicily too. I've been to the town that they were from.
What'd they grow?
Well, by the time I was born and knew them, I'm not sure that it's actually what the farm was in the heyday, but they grew vegetables. They had animals, cows and pigs. I mean, it was like your basic farm. Like I remember being in my great-grandfather's barn, and it was like one of these huge, like upstate New York triple-decker barns with plow horses and other farm animals in the bottom and hay and all the things.
Is this like Hudson Valley?
Further north, like Albany.
Albany, okay. So they like going to sell, or were they just farming to live?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, I know they farmed to live. I know my father went there in the summers and worked every summer. And gosh, I feel like I've heard him talking about like, driving things down to market, but I think they also lived. My grandparents, so my grandmother Santa and my grandfather, whose family came from the same small town in Sicily, literally farmed in their suburban homes, they would have these massive gardens and they would farm. And if you, even in my grandmother's later life, you would like open a cabinet in their house, it was literally all canned goods. We used to joke that if there was ever an apocalypse, that's where you wanted to be, because everything from toilet paper and paper towels to bread and butter pickles or tomato sauce they had in the house.
Is that the stereotypical Depression era family where it's like...
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny, knowing you, there's a couple of things that I know are important to you that this makes a lot of sense, right? One is really good, high quality food.
Yeah.
I know you're big on eating whole foods, and you like no bagged foods.
No bags, no boxes.
No bags, no boxes, right? So you really appreciate whole foods. And then the other thing was waste.
Oh, can't stand it.
I know, yeah.
Oh God, you just brought back a memory. I remember being in the chicken coop with my great grandmother.
Probably some chicken poop.
There was poop in there too. And I was pretty young. I mean, she lived until I was 19. I had great-grandparents, multiple great-grandparents, much of my youth. And she was the last surviving. I remember being with her when I was pretty young. I mean, like waist high kind of young, and dropping an egg in the chicken coop. And she didn't speak a lot of English, but the disappointment on her face that I had dropped this one egg was a lot. I mean, it obviously was a core memory moment for me because I still remember it now, and it's more than 50 years ago. But yeah, waste is not okay. Not okay. My grandmother, Crupi, I mean, she didn't think of it as being an environmentalist, but she was washing plastic bags and reusing them before anybody else thought to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, rinsing, tinfoil, all of it.
Yeah. I think back to my grandmother talking about waste, and part of this was her coming up, Grandma Dixie, during World War II. They would peel the tinfoil off of gum wrappers.
Well, and the notion that thrift is a virtue. I mean, that is so gone. What is so interesting to me, though, as I was reflecting on the conversation we're going to have, is both my grandmothers lived through the same thing and how different they were. You know, I mean, Grandma Crupi was all about thrift and industry, and my other grandmother had a pretty extreme depression story, like living through the depression. And she was not that. She was a fun maximizer and an optimist. And I think about her and her outlook, and the word that comes to mind is bounty. And this notion of bounty is something that I've worked for years to cultivate as a stance in life.
Okay. We talked about harmony and unity. As you were thinking about your grandmothers in our conversation, before we had more time to think about it, was how divergent they were.
Yeah.
There's not really harmony in those experiences. But then I look at you, and here you are. You're somebody who lives life to the fullest, right? I think of you as a fun maximizer.
Oh, I'm absolutely a fun maximizer.
Yeah. But then also the thrift from your grandmother, Crupi. I'm so interested in that, the harmony of those two people coming together to produce you.
Yeah. I haven't reflected on them in a while. I miss them both a great deal. And it's very interesting to me to look at how both their fingerprints, both positive and negative, are all over me.
Say more about that.
Well, I'm glad you can cut some of this out, because I got to think about that question for a second. Think of it, to ask me again.
So I asked you to talk more about really the positive and the negative things that have shown up in your life or are part of you that you've gotten from both of them.
Yeah.
But before we go there, let's put a pin in that. We talked a little bit about where your grandmother Crupi's from. Talk about Phyllis.
Phyllis. So she has a really interesting history, too.
This is your grandmother from Massachusetts.
My grandmother from Massachusetts. And that side, I don't understand quite as well. But here are the things I know about my grandmother. She was the daughter of a Russian Jew. That was my great-grandfather, who died of the Spanish flu when she was very young. And her mother, Annabelle Davidson, that was her married name. I don't know what her original name was, but her father died, and her mother worked for like a very wealthy man. I guess it's like a housekeeper or watching his children. They secretly married in the years before the Depression. And so
Her and the wealthy man.
And so my grandmother grew up on this farm with stepbrothers in this very wealthy environment. She went to school in a limousine, and she literally like had this very sort of opulent experience, but didn't know that this man was her stepfather. And then you are not going to believe this story. Here's what I've heard from my grandmother.
Hold on. We'll go back because I'm not tracking. So your grandmother is the daughter
of Annabelle Davidson.
Annabelle Davidson.
Who was the housekeeper.
Secretly married
to a very wealthy man.
Very wealthy man. And he was to to the public, he was just like a bachelor.
Yeah, a widow. A widower. A widower.
A widower. Oh.
A widower who had some sons and a farm, and she was his housekeeper and watched the kids. And gosh, I don't actually know the chronology very well, but let me tell you what happened. My grandmother had a little dog, and it ran into a field with a bull. And Mr. Prentice went to try to save it, and he was gored by the bull and died.
Oh my God.
You can't make this up.
Wow. If I was watching a movie, if I was watching a movie and that happened, that's a little on the nose. That's going to be symbolic somewhere.
And that is when this marriage surfaced. And lawsuits, actually, now I'm remembering other things. My grandmother would beautifully tell these stories. I mean, she would tell them over and over again. Yeah, I mean, there was more, during the Great Depression, I guess everything crashed and they kind of, I think this is how it goes. I'm sorry, Kenan, I'm now sorting. I didn't know we were going to go this far back.
That's fine.
But so what happened was during the Depression, I guess Mr. Prentice was going to lose the farm. And then that's when Annabelle and he married because she had insurance money from the death of her husband who died of Spanish flu. And so she bailed him out. They married and it didn't surface until he was killed. And then there were all kinds of lawsuits and crazy things. So my grandmother had this like sort of, rags to riches to rags to riches, growing up. And then when she was very young, she met my grandfather. She was in her late teens. I think, I won't get it exactly right, but I think she was like 17 or 18. And they got married when she was, under 20. Right around World War II, he was a pilot. He was one of the first pilots, flew B-52s. And they got married and he went off to war. It's kind of classic war love story. And then...
Did he make it back?
He did.
Okay, at least somebody survived.
He made it back. He was actually a tremendous war hero. He did lots of amazing things. He stayed in and out of the Air Force his whole life and was a general in the Air Force Reserves.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. You can look him up online.
What's his name?
Charlie Briggs. Charles Dwight Briggs. Mm-hmm.
Charles Dwight Briggs.
Yeah, he won a lot of, won is not the right word, but he was very decorated. And it's funny, I have his flight jacket, not the leather one, but I have like the one that he wore as a general. And when I was in college, I used to wear it sometimes. And he flew out of Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, and I went to school in DC. And I one time was like walking around like a Home Depot or something in it, and someone stopped me. And they were like, I knew your grandfather. He was a great man. So, yeah.
It's very punk rock of you. It's like,
yeah, that was me. That was very much me.
We were wearing combat boots at the time, Doc Martin.
No, not yet, but everything else was black.
Yeah,
for sure.
Funny. Wow, and that's so funny because when there's another part of your family history on that side that you mentioned in our pre-interview, and I stopped you. I was like, don't say another word about it, but you mentioned the Daughters of the American Revolution. Yeah,
my grandmother was a daughter of the American Revolution, and that must have come through her mom's family, and I don't know much about them. On my grandfather's side, the Briggses there were relatives that came on the Mayflower, but the Briggses, Clement Briggs, was a couple boats later. But we're talking like as far back as it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, such a rich family history. It's incredible. Who keeps track of all this stuff?
My grandfather had a tremendous amount of stuff. When he died, I remember going through his things, and my cousins and I found photos that he took from the air in World War II. He flew bombers in the Pacific Theater. There were books going. Nathaniel Greene is one of my ancestors. So I found books from the Civil War, like photo albums from the Civil War of Greene's. One of my mom's cousins took them because he's kind of an archivist and historian. My grandmother told these stories all the time. My sister recorded some of them. My grandfather was very reluctant to talk about these things, so it was interesting to find all these, after he passed away, find all of these sort of this memorabilia and history and photos and things. But it's well documented. I mean, my mom has a gunpowder horn from the Revolutionary War. My aunt has a letter that was written by an ancestor when he was going off to the Revolutionary War that he wrote to his son, and he did not come back. So there's just a lot of history on that side.
That's incredible.
Both sides are amazing. I mean, the Crupis came over here with nothing. I mean, it was the Crupis and the Palellas. My grandmother was originally a Palella. They came and, within the waves of Italian immigrants, they were just incredibly hardworking. My grandmother Crupi had a PhD in English literature, and she taught English at Prince George's County College in Maryland until very late in life. My grandfather worked for the Department of the Navy. After he was in World War II as well. He was in the Navy and made a really impressive career out of that as well. I mean, we're talking people who came here with nothing. And my grandfather, Crupi, he was born in Italy and went to college and worked 2 jobs at the same time and supported his family while he was doing it. It's pretty amazing. And probably farmed at the same time.
That's incredible. There's a thing about work ethic and the things that people were able to accomplish. Maybe you have some insight on this. I have the sense that I just don't work that hard compared to my grandfather or some, other people who would go back as far as like the people you're talking about, the sort of the hardships they went through, and then just the idea that it was perseverance, like all around.
Well, different things were respected, were revered then. When you think about thrift industry, hard work, I mean, these were virtues. We live in a society now where one of the primary messages we hear is like, everyday luxury, you deserve it. Work-life balance. That wasn't a thing. They didn't talk about work-life balance. I don't think, the lifestyles that are promoted or that you see in the media are just not that. And I don't know. I mean, I can tell you where I think it comes from, but I don't like it.
Go ahead. Tell me where you think it comes from.
Well, in post-World War II, the creation of the consumer economy, I mean, it's all based on, we had this industrial complex that had to sell stuff somewhere. And the notion of all of these service people coming back from the war and needing to like have a place to live and jobs and all those things. The creation of the consumer economy was extremely intentional. And that machine has been running ever since. And we're running it hot. It's based on, debt and consumerism and feeling like we deserve to have these things. I mean, I look back at, and this is more my grandmother Crupi, there was never any sense of that. And actually looking at both of them, they sewed. I mean, even my mother made most of my clothes as a child. Who does that? I don't even know how to sew. It's just a different time.
Yeah, it reminds me of something. We've recorded a bunch of stuff today, pulling back the curtain, just things we're working on and piecing together. But as we were warming up and just chatting, I was talking about how I got rid of my social media a couple weeks ago, and I've just been happier and more productive. And I was saying that this podcast is part of that. It's a creative endeavor, and I've been missing something like that. I was talking about how going from a consumer mindset to a more creative mindset. And my time in between all of my daily tasks would typically be spent like scrolling through Instagram at things that are mindless and just consuming content for some sort of entertainment. It's sort of like eating candy between meals, The tasks that I have to do are like meals, but in between it's like I was just snacking on candy for my mind. And that's what the social media was. Consuming. Not doing that, I feel like I'm actually giving so much more, and I feel so much more purposeful. I think that sounds like what you're hitting on.
I mean, there was certainly more white space.
Yeah.
In earlier times as well.
What do you mean by that? I think I know what you mean, but tell me what you mean.
Yeah, it just, media wasn't crowding up every minute. It was just a different time, totally different. I have been reflecting on like what my grandmother's found joyful. I just have been excavating it. It's been very interesting. I mean, almost every day I wear things that they gave me. The jewelry that I generally wear is from my grandmother's. And I feel like they're always with me.
Yeah. So what does that mean to you? Having your grandmother's with you in that way, and how does that affect the way that you operate, you live your life? You have, it seems like, a really like well-developed idea of who they are. And what they mean to you. You keep these reminders of them. Mm-hmm. How does that affect the way you live your life?
Well, one example is I have a necklace that I don't wear so much. I used to wear it more when I was working in the office and I was doing things that were really hard. I always wore it on days when I was facing something that was kind of scary. I wore it for our first episode.
Really?
Yeah, actually, this is really interesting. So it's like a metal circle and it has an offset diamond in the corner. And that diamond was Annabelle Davidson's, my great-grandmother's engagement ring. And my grandmother wore it for as long as I can remember. I mean, she had a ring that had that, and I don't know where the other diamond came from, but 2. And I wear it because I know what Annabelle Davidson went through, and I know what my grandmother faced. I mean, she was left behind for World War II for Korea for the Vietnam War. She raised two amazing girls. She was an entrepreneur. She ran her own small business my entire childhood until my children were grown. She was a dancer, and she had a dancing studio, and she taught thousands and thousands and thousands of girls and women to dance. And I just find her terribly inspiring. And so when I'm facing something really hard, I bring Grammy Briggs with me. I wear that diamond. So
yeah, so it's funny. I teased that we were going to talk about where you are now and more about you, and I haven't done that yet. So we've got some background, and we're talking about you doing hard things or things that might be scary. So what do you do now?
Like, what is my work?
Yeah, let's start with work. What is your work?
Yeah, my career has been dedicated to helping people change. That's basically the theme. I've done lots of different things in lots of different industries. What I do now is I'm part of a company called Scaled Agile that does, it's kind of like a think tank. And we try to innovate new ways of working that are going to both produce better outcomes, largely for companies, that are more delightful and satisfying for people who are working. And that really is what motivates me. I do a lot of work with leaders and helping them basically be the very best leaders that they can be. The most supportive, I use the word generative, which doesn't necessarily mean a lot to many people, but that it's just a force for positive. To me, it's like being your best self and being kind and helping other people realize their full potential. I think that is really what leaders are meant to do. So my career has been dedicated to that in many different ways. Maybe my more important job is being a mom of kids, some of them born to me and some not. We've got 5 in total. And that is a huge act of love and service to me that I signed up for and take very, very seriously. And then I have a call. I'm a Quaker. That's a very prominent thing to me, and it's a very curious thing to lots of people who I tell that to. That is a call also to see and respond to the light that is in every single person that I see. In some people that's easy, and some people that's not easy. Sometimes I win and sometimes I fail at that. Across all 3 of these things that you've mentioned, you've spoken about it and used the word, you've said it's a calling to you. What is it that calls you to do those things? What do I make of that ineffable, completely not understandable sense of purpose? Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I grew up in a very traditionally religious family. It never fit from a very young age. And there were different times in my life where I thought like I was going to have a call. Like I remember going to graduate school, I studied theology, and I thought I'm going to show up and it is going to be clear. And it wasn't. And it was so frustrating. Like, do I believe that there's some entity? It's so hard to describe being something. Not really. Do I feel called to things? Absolutely. And it is entirely ineffable. I'm not understandable. I don't actually know. But what I do believe, like this is borne out in some of the darkest times in my life, is like my job is just to look for that next. I like imagine myself in like this deep forest, a deep, dark forest. And sometimes it can be a really scary forest. And all I'm looking for is where's that next spot where the light is breaking through the canopy where I can put my foot. And I know that's the thing to do. And I believe Quakers have a saying, way will open. And that is true. That is true for me. And so I just put my foot in that next spot of light and believe it's going to go somewhere really meaningful. My job is just to follow that. Another thing you've talked about is work. Mm-hmm. You work a lot. Not so much. A lot of things. Well, yeah, I work really hard. Here's what I mean. Yeah. So not work isn't necessarily just your job, but you work hard at things. Oh, yeah. You do something, you put a lot of effort into it once you decide it's valuable. One thing you talked about in your career was you help people find a delightful and satisfying way to work. Yeah. What does that mean? What does delightful mean? The people are using their whole self, that is joyful, that it's free of unnecessary friction, that your work is a place where you can create in a way that is both fun and satisfying and valuable. For myself and for our listeners, what are some things that we can do, or maybe some concepts that we can apply to remove friction in any area of our life so that we get more joy out of the things that we do? One of my base tenets is it's a hell yes or no. Okay. You've heard me say that. Yeah, I've heard you say it so many times. So many times. I know what you mean. Tell our listeners what you mean. Right. If I'm thinking about if I'm going to spend my time on something, if it doesn't feel like a hell yes, right? Like if it feels like meh, or if I have that disquieted feeling, there's probably a reason to not. And that's true in the world of work. It's true in the world of home. It's true in the world of play. There are lots of things where, you're asked to I don't know, fill out a form, follow a procedure, whatever. If it doesn't feel like it's valuable, it probably isn't. It's probably worth a question. Sometimes you just got to do it. But for me, it's a hell yes or no. And if it feels like a no, or not a hell yes, then it's worth questioning. I mean, I should say out loud, I'm also kind of a rebel and I don't really believe in following the rules or process. So that makes me, a little maverick about these things.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a sort of way of operating that you've developed that guards you from unnecessary frustration and from wasted effort.
I'm in a place in my life, in my career, where I don't have to do that.
How long did it take you to get there?
I would say it's probably I've been in the state for, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years. So I'm 57 now, so 40s. I can think of several places in my career. You have those moments where what got me here isn't going to get me there. You have to really take whatever you were really good at that got you to a certain point isn't going to carry you forward. You got to change your patterns. And that's usually when I start really looking critically at myself. So for instance, it's been 5 years or more since I stopped reading email. There are some spheres of my life, I have a big role in my Quaker meeting right now where I have to read email. But generally speaking, I have ignored email for 5 years. I started doing that based on the theory. Well, it just felt like a waste of time. And I started with an experiment of how much trouble am I going to get in if I don't do it? And I don't know, in a 6-month period, 4 times. That's acceptable to me.
And then it just becomes, Cheryl doesn't do email.
Yeah. Basically, it's not a high value activity. So, when I have a philosophy of embracing the joy of missing out instead of the fear of missing out.
I'm right there with you. But talk about it, please.
Okay. So this arose in work, right? Where everybody wants to have the know and be involved in everything. And I just was I need to, and I was a people leader at that time. And I just felt I need to.
Leader?
Yeah.
Leader.
Yeah. Okay. Leader. Yeah. I was a people leader. And I felt I think I'm manifesting distrust by needing to be in everybody's business. I need to get out of the way. I need to just embrace this joy of missing out. These people want to take on these things. They want to shine. They want to be creative. The last thing they want is for me to be looking over their shoulder. I had this experience once where I think I made up I was being encouraging. I had a team that was trying to do something that was really, really hard. And they said, "We don't think we can do this." And I said, "Sure you can." Which I thought was being believing, right? I'm being supportive. I said, "Sure you can. Here's what I would do." And then over the weekend, I realized, oh my God, that was just clandestinely telling them what to do. I got to quit that. I had a couple experiences like that where I just realized I need to cultivate the joy of missing out. It applies in parenting too, right? There's this weird point in parenting where you go from being involved in literally every aspect of children's lives to hopefully progressively letting go and just getting out of the way. I have to celebrate the fact that they want to do things without me, and in fact, without my input.
Because your kids are how old now?
I have a stepson who's in his 30s, and then I've got 22, 19, plus a bonus 19-year-old that I love dearly, and 15.
And we were talking, and I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. I'm at the point in my life where they need me all the time. And it can be... this loaded term, oppressive at points where it's just hey, mom and dad need some space. More so for my wife because she spends a lot more time with kids. But what are there some specific instances sort of extricating yourself so that they can blossom? Can you give an example of how you did it and how it paid off?
There are tons of tiny little examples no, I'm not making your haircut appointment. I mean? Yeah. It's not it's a slow transition. And actually the hint that it's time is whenever I feel resentment, I know it's time to make a change. And so if I start feeling resentful about something that I'm doing for one of my kids, it's usually a sign that it's no, you can schedule your own physical. You can cook that thing.
I'll see if I can rephrase it, and you correct me if I get this wrong. When you feel resentment towards a situation, do you understand that it's a time for change?
Absolutely. And that's in every sphere. That's part of the hell yes or no. The way I know it's not a hell yes is if I have any, I'm not prone to resentment. I basically make it a policy in my life to be delighted. And So if something is not delightful, if I feel at all resentful, I feel frictiony or I'm avoiding it, that's a good sign that it's not something I should be doing. And that, that might be a social obligation. The other thing that I'm really into is clear is kind. And I was really influenced by Martha Beck. That's Brene Brown. That's a Brene Brown quote. But Martha Beck, I heard a podcast interview with her where she's talking about what she calls the integrity audit. I hope I'm getting this right, but what she described as spending an entire year only speaking truth. So think about that for a second and think about all the tiny little dodges and sort of obfuscations and white lies and all those things that people say.
The spin,
anything that isn't totally true. That really influenced me. And so I try to apply that, not speaking untruth, which can, it doesn't mean that whatever you say, whatever you think you have to say, but it's that nothing untrue come out of your mouth. And so that's a lot of clarity as well.
I think a lot more. I think you'd spend a lot more time in silence, which is probably a good thing too.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of not speaking. And there's, there are gentler ways of being honest than not. That's a process.
I love that constraint to only speaking truth. I have this thing about constraints where that's where you really get to shine is when you're constrained, because then you have to figure out a workaround.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't lie to this person, but how can I influence them or help them see the truth in a way that's not going to be upsetting to them? Or how do I do it in a way that's going to have a positive effect on them or her relationship or whatever?
I mean, it might be upsetting.
Sure.
I'm thinking of a
and then
situation.
It's like, how do you deal with that?
I mean, we're talking about all different spheres now, but I'm thinking about a situation where I had someone working for me at work, and he had a bad outcome for our annual review. He hadn't worked for me the whole year, so it wasn't all me. And, there were financial consequences to that as well. And I remember being very fearful about having to have a frank conversation with him about it. And I did. And it was the first time that I was like really clear. And I remember looking him in the eyes and I was like, I know you're mad. And if you choose to hang with me another year, I promise you that these things that you're hearing about you every single time I see that, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you exactly what I see. And I believe that at the end of this year, you will be where you want to be. But you got to come with me. And he did. And that was one of the best working relationships I ever had.
I've learned this at my job. I don't know if I mentioned this podcast or not, but I'm a coach. And where I work at Courage Fitness Durham, man, I got to shout out Nick Mula. He's our team lead on the coaching side. And it's not truth to power, but it's that same concept. It's more like speaking truth in the face of fear. And usually the fear is social. You're afraid to upset somebody. And man, he's really good at it. And he's trained us up to be really good at telling people what they need to know. And yes, we do it in a way where we want them to be receptive to it, but you just got to get over the fear of telling the truth to somebody. And 9 times out of 10, especially when you're working with somebody on an outcome that they want, they'll take it. It can be hard, but they come around and they get on board.
I want to go even further than that. Here's what I've learned is you're right. Right. All the things that I talked about, like sort of being dodgy or, vague or whatever, that is largely about the speaker's comfort.
Yes.
It is about what I don't want to be uncomfortable about what I make up you're going to take from this. What I've found is when real honesty is offered, that's right action, right? It's the right thing to do and it's helpful to that person. But what I'm most aware of is how I change, how it changes me. And again, that's not my aim, but what I found is that like living this life of cultivating bounty and trying to have it honesty as much as I can, even though it's sometimes really scary, that's changed me.
Yeah, that brings it right back to grandmother Phyllis.
Yeah.
Cultivating bounty.
Yeah, cultivating bounty. What I will say about grandmother Phyllis is, as I said at the beginning, that both of these women left fingerprints all over me. And I was very lucky to have grandmothers that I knew and saw all the time, as well as great-grandparents that I, on the Italian side, is, she put a sheen, like a beautiful sheen on everything. We were always the smartest, the most beautiful. We were always the president of whatever we did. We always got straight A's. I mean, it was kind of like living in Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon days, the motto. It's an old radio show where he used to, the beginning always said, Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average was the tagline from that radio show, where I felt like my grandmother Briggs was always, the lens was just like looking at it like we were just always amazing. And it didn't always feel authentic, right? Because I wasn't always the president, and I wasn't always getting straight A's, and I wasn't, always the most beautiful girl. My grandmother Crupi was really able to look hard things in the eye. She never sugarcoated anything. She was rigorous. She was resolute. She was literally unyielding. I mean, she's the only person I ever saw literally every time I went to church that on the way out, she told the preacher what they got wrong. And, and she, mind was a steel trap. She never forgot a thing. And she was unrelenting in her pursuit of what was important to her. So I got that too.
I think, like I said this before, in you, those two very different people, there's a harmony there.
Yeah.
Where you're balancing those things out. It's really incredible. It's incredible to know you and to watch you operate and to get to work with you closely on this thing. And now I feel like myself and our listeners, we're so privileged to get the backstory of that. To the people that are going to listen to this first, those people that we've recruited to listen and give us feedback, they do know you. I hope that they find as much joy as I do right now, hearing a bit about why you are the way you are. And then how you've taken these two people and processed your time with them, the things you learned from them, and consolidated it really, into a way that's incredible, that permeates your work life, your life as a mom. It's really incredible.
Thank you.
So of those 5 children that you have.
Yeah. You aren't going to ask me which one is my favorite, are you?
No, but we're going to, this has been a very maternal podcast. We're going to zoom in on your thoughts and your relationship with the youngest.
My daughter. Yeah, because we talked about this.
Your one girl.
Yeah, of all of them, just one girl.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Do you remember what you said?
I said I get one swing at this.
One swing at what?
Raising a daughter, raising a woman for the next generation. God, and it feels so weighty. It really does. I mean, this batch of young women is facing a lot. I think we all do, but it just seems like what they're facing is a lot.
I agree. And, I have 2 daughters, and I'm definitely going to be processing this story and time spent with you to add to how I raise those girls and think about them. Thank you for that. One more thing. I was talking about our interview prep to somebody, and I mentioned what you said and about raising the next generation of young women, and you get one swing at it. And the person was like, well, make sure she realizes she doesn't have to do that on her own. And not that I think you're doing it on your own, but I think you are very up to and excited about the challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I will first speak gratitude to my husband, Damien Makarushka, father of Beatrice Makarushka, as well as the rest of the crew. But I think that a father's relationship with their daughter, I think it's pretty well researched, but I can say this just from personal experience, is so vital, right? Because that's imprinting how do you relate to men. And he has done a beautiful job building a very sweet and deep relationship with her. What I have felt, now that you've raised this and I'm thinking about it, what I have felt as her mother, I've always felt tremendous guilt about my career. I remember going back to work after I had my first, and I was having so much fun at work. I remember having a day where I was literally, I remember kind of coming down a staircase in the building where I worked. I was just so into what I was doing. I was so joyful, and I stopped in my tracks. And I thought, oh my God, you're paying someone to watch your child. What is wrong with you? And I went home and I asked my husband, do you ever feel this way? And he said, no, not at all. And so I've always felt kind of freighted with this, is it weird that I have so much joy in my work outside the home? And what I realized from Beatrice is that I've given her a model of a woman who both is deeply in her family and also joyfully in the world, doing work that I find meaningful, that is bringing to be the world I want to see and being very successful at it. And I love that. I feel like I've tried to bring her play and the loving and beautiful context of Quakerism, which is, striving always for peace and beauty and simplicity. I feel like, freighted her up with those things. And then all you can do is just live it faithfully every day and hope that that's what comes out at the end. And I see that happening.
I'm so happy for you.
Then, you just have to see how you gotta wait for the rest of the game to play out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. Thank
I
you.
hope you find that same joy
I hope so too.
parenting your beautiful daughters.
Thank you. Yeah, let's end it there.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kenan.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm looking forward to the next episode we record where we're both on the same side of the table, helping somebody else tell a story as beautiful and connecting as yours is. Thank you so much.
Thanks for helping me tell the story.
Absolutely.